All right, let's get to it. Let's go to work. So over the next few weeks, I'm not sure exactly how many weeks we'll be in this particular series because I'm not sure like how much I'm be able to get through on every single call, but I do have a good amount of information laid out where everybody should be able to get revelation for any type of situation that you may be dealing with, because what we're going to be discussing over the next few weeks is something that many people battle with, many believers battle with. And what I'm talking about is the gap between the promises of God and the fulfillment of those promises. If you know what I'm talking about, just put a 777 in the chat right quick. If you've ever had to battle with having a word from God, having a promise, having a vision, having this thing you know you want to get done, but then there's this long gap, right? And that the gap is between the fulfillment of those promises. And the challenge for many people is that we fall into a place called impatience. See, every person deals and battles with this issue, the issue of impatience. And here's the thing about impatience. The reason why we lack patience, man, is because they're deep down. Hey, babe, make sure you're helping me out with the meeting room, right? So deep down, the reason why we lack patience is because deep down we have this desire to be in control. Yeah, the reason why we lack patience is because deep down inside, we have this desire to be in control and to want to control the outcome and want to control the way that the situation unfolds, but we don't have the revelation that we're never actually in control. Yeah, see, control is an illusion. Control is an illusion. And the only way to truly be in control, Miss China, is to be out of control. The only way to be in control is to be out of control. Riyadh, what do you mean by that? See, you have to be out of control and let God take control. That's the only way that you find yourself in the place of being in control, because it's God that's in control. And if it's God is in control, you've relinquished that control to him. That's the safest place where you can be. But when it comes down to you, my friend, trying to control the outcome and trying to do these different things and trying to control the situation, and it's you. Remember, God is not impressed with anything that you get done in your own strength. Can I talk about that real quick? Like, he's not impressed by anything that you do independent of him. Because if you can do something independent of him, why is faith necessary? Why does it say to trust in him? Why does it say to lean on him and not your own understanding? See, he wants us to be able to lean on him in every decision that we make. Every decision that we make, he wants us to lean on him, and he wants to be the one that's in control of our lives. We're controlled to a little extent. What we control is our decision. What we control is choices, but what we don't control is the acts that follow the choice. We don't control the things that follow the decision. God is the only one that's in control. And so we'll have a better understanding of what it means to be patient when we first relinquish any want to or any desire to be in control of our situation. Because the only way that we can be in control is to be out of control. And when we're out of control, that means we allow God to get in control, and he is the one that controls our situations. Is this making sense so far? If you're picking up what I'm putting down, put a 777 in the chat. We are just getting warmed up. I missed y'all so much. I missed y'all so much. So, but here's the thing about impatience. Impatience is very dangerous. Put that in your notes. Impatience is dangerous. The reason why impatience is dangerous is because it starts off a cycle. Impatience is dangerous because it leads to a cycle. And what happens after impatience, it leads to something called worry. Impatience is what leads to worry. See, when something isn't happening at the speed in which you want it to happen, then you start to say stuff like, dang, where is it at? Like, when is it going to come? Like, when the world and when is this go? I've been writing this goal down for X, Y, and Z. I've been believing for this to happen for all this time, and it still has not showed up yet. And because it hasn't showed up yet, we now conjure up so many different ideas and ideologies in our mind about why it is not working and why it has not showed up yet. And then we began to speak the reason that's not factual, that's not truth, as to why it hasn't showed up. And then we further We push it away from showing up more. We hinder it from showing up in our life more because we started to worry. Worry is something that dominates the mind of unbelievers. When you begin to worry, you now put yourself in the category of unbelief. And if you fall in the category of unbelief, that means the scripture that says all things or God, or we can do, what's the scripture I've got on the top of my head, on the tip of my tongue? All things are possible to those that believe. There you go. All things are possible to those that believe. So if I'm in a place of worry, and worry is a sign of unbelief, that means the scripture that says all things are possible to those that believe is no longer valid for me. But it started off as me being impatient, and impatient led to the worry. And then in worry is what leads to the frustration. Please pay attention and pick up what I'm putting down. Worry is what leads to frustration. We went from being impatient to being worried about when it's going to happen. Worry leads to question. Frustration leads to statements. Worry will make you question, like, dang, why hasn't it happened yet? Why hasn't it happened yet? When is it going to show up? Where is God? But frustration leads to you making statements like, God isn't with me, God has left me, or this isn't going to work out, or you start thinking of all the reasons that it's not going to work out through worry, and then you start to speak them through your frustration. So worry makes you question, but frustration makes you speak. And out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth will speak. If worry is in your heart, it has to come out of your mouth through frustration. And when it comes out of your mouth, it has no choice but to show up in your life. The things that follows frustration is doubt, though. See, after I move from frustration, I now move into now doubting the promises of God. I start to doubt the promises of God. But even in the midst of your worry, please pay attention, even in the midst of frustration, even in the midst of doubt, God can still move. Yeah, even in the midst of all of that, God can still move. But where he cannot move, or where he does not like to move, or where you're easily, or it's easier to hinder the move of God, is when you move to the final phase of the cycle, which is disbelief. And now you no longer just doubt the promises of God, but now you don't believe the promises of God anymore. But it started off as impatience because you couldn't continue to believe. You couldn't continue to trust. You couldn't continue to have patience. Here's what you got to put in your notes. The goal of the enemy is to make you harden your heart to the promises of God. That's one of his goals. He wants you to harden your heart, JVL, to the promises of God. Because if you can harden your heart to the promises of God, then your heart can no longer receive the miracles of God. Riyadh, what are you talking about? Y'all remember when Jesus went back to his hometown? And it says he couldn't do many miracles there because of their unbelief, because of the hardness of their hearts. So the enemy, through time, through pressure, all right, through the trials of life, he tries to make you discount and disbelieve the promises of God and make your heart hard to the promises of God. Riyadh, what does that mean to have a hard heart to the promises of God? You stop believing that he can do it through you. Simple. Like, oh, God don't want to do that anymore. I wrote this goal down, but he don't want to do that one for me anymore. You stop believing. When people start to talk about what God can do, your heart can no longer receive it anymore because your heart has become hardened. But it started with being impatient. So impatient is dangerous because impatience starts a cycle. Again, it leads to worry. Then it leads to frustration, then it leads to doubt, and then it leads to disbelief. And when you no longer believe, nothing is possible for you anymore. That means anything that God does in your life is simply, everything he does is simply out of our grace, but you hinder him doing things with your disbelief. But it starts with impatience. Because understand this, time will either build you up or time will break you down. Time will build you or time will break you. Pressure will make diamonds or pressure will bust pipes. So God has a treasure for each and every single one of us. Without a doubt, unquestionable. He has a promise, he has a treasure, he has blessings, he has things for each and every single one of us. But here's what we have to understand about God's treasure. God's treasure is not limited to man's timetable. The treasures and the promises of God is not limited to our timetables. It's not limited to when we think it should happen. It's not limited to when we believe that we are ready for something. God is so sovereign that he sits on top of time in a place called eternity. And when he's ready to do something in your life, because he already did it in eternity, he can do it at will, at a snap of a finger, and just send it into time. So he's not confined to time. What can take 6 months for somebody without God to do can take you 6 days. Because he sits on top of time in a place called eternity. He's not confined to time. He is the creator of time. So the treasure that he has for us is not limited to the timetable that we set, but it's for an appointed time. And he is the one that appoints the time. You have no idea when that appointed time will be. The only thing that you can do, watch this, is trust. The only thing that you can do is trust. That's it. Now understand this though. The time at which God moves, everything that God does, it's always saying something. It's very important. Don't get it twisted. When God is moving in your life, he's moving when he's physically, when you can see the move that he's making in your life, it's intentional. But even when you can't see what he's doing behind the scenes, he hides it from you intentionally, because the goal of a believer is to be able to trust him even when we can't see physical evidence that he is moving. So blessed are those who can believe without seeing evidence. Like he told Doubting Thomas, blessed are those that can believe in me without seeing me. So blessed are those who can believe without seeing evidence of the promises, but you can still believe God. Man, the best timing is God's timing. The most efficient timing is God's timing. There is no other time that's better than God's time. You got winter time, you got summertime, you got fall time, you got springtime, as Jasmine, but then you got God's time. And when there is no more winter, spring, summer, fall, God's timing will still be here. Is this making sense? So what we have to do is just fall in love with the timing of God. See, timing, my friends, is so important that you can't have good music without timing. Sports, do you know that the difference between a home run and a foul ball is the timing of the swing of the bat? Do you understand the difference in a touchdown and an interception is the timing in which the quarterback releases the ball? Timing is so important. Timing in business is so important. Doing the right things in business is so important. Imagine doing the old thing at a new time. Timing is so important. Timing in leadership is important when it comes down to casting vision to your organization about where the organization is going. You got to know the right timing to cast vision so that the hearts of the people can receive vision. Man, timing is so important. Don't miss it. Timing is so important. But nothing, watch this, nothing can beat the timing of God. Nothing can beat the timing of God. Like, think about it. How could the timing of God be so accurate that a 12-year-old girl could be battling with an issue and she's close to death, and at that same time, a lady who had been battling with the issue of blood for 12 years, how can they meet Jesus in the same time on virtually the same path? to get a similar miracle worked? How could Jesus be there at the right time so that the lady with the issue of blood could come touch the hem of his coat? At that same time, Jairus had a daughter who was 12 years old, who was sick, about to die. How could the timing of God be so important that a 12-year-old little girl and a lady who had been battling with an issue of blood for 12 years could meet at the same place? The timing of God was so good that Jonah, man, who was disobedient to God. He was disobedient to God. Did the opposite of what God told him to do. Was thrown off a ship. How could the timing of God be so beautiful that a whale could come scoop Jonah up and he could lay in the whale for 3 days and then be spit out onto land? The timing of God. Think about your parents, the timing in which they had the ability to meet and have intercourse at the time in which your seed came to the earth. The timing of God for my dad to walk into the Rainbow Food Mart and to meet my mom at the register in 1990, I believe, one. And then have me 2 years later. And then 28 years later, here I am today doing what God has called me to do. The timing of God, nothing can beat it. Nothing can beat the timing of God. What if my mom didn't go to work that day that my dad walked in? You understand what I'm saying? Like, it's just small things. Y'all remember when we were kids and we would watch these movies and they would go back into the past and they would change one thing, one small thing, and it messes up everything in history. Just imagine if my dad came in at the wrong time when my mom wasn't working. You understand? Like, think about how your parents met. Think about how you now have a kid. Think about that, man. What if I did not go to the office the day that Sydney was at the office? You understand? Like, and we never met the way in which we did. Like, you got to pay attention to the timing of God is so important. And because the timing of God is so important, he values our wait. Because the timing of God is so important, he values the waits. We was doing a prayer call yesterday. I was like, yo, I'm lit. I got a whole new lane in which we taking the call. God spoke it to me. It was so crazy. Like, the title of today's call is so good. It's going to bless us. It's going to bless each and every single body, every single person that's called. Not the title of this series, I mean, where we're going with the series, because the timing of God is so important. He values our wait. So I looked up definitions of wait, and I found 2 definitions that stood out to me the most, and these are the ones that we're going to talk about for today and as we continue to move forward. All right, and it's another one, but it's not listed right now. We're going to do another call. All right, so the definition that stood out to me first was the Hebrew word for wait. Right? So the Hebrew word, like, God is very strategic and he speaks through words. And so words, a lot of them carry secrets. And so when you get a word, you want to be able to look up different definitions, because you're going to get different context from it. All right. So the Hebrew word for wait is, I believe it's pronounced quava, Q-A-V-A-H, Q-A-V-A-H. Q-A-V-A-H. And now quava, what it means is to wait actively. It means to wait actively with anticipation, hopefully watching for God to act. Now, I don't know who else that blessed me. The Hebrew definition for wait. So it doesn't mean to wait and don't do anything. It don't mean just wait on your butt. It means to wait actively with anticipation, hopefully watching for God to act. The second definition that I want to dive into is this one. Wait means to remain. If you was on one of the last calls and you understand how important that word remain is. Wait means to remain in readiness for some purpose. So quaver means to wait actively. The Hebrew definition of wait means to actively wait with anticipation. So I'm not just waiting, I'm eagerly anticipating God to do something. So that means I'm hopefully watching for God to act. Wait means to remain in readiness for a purpose. We talked about on a previous call of To Know Him. I think it was John 14 or John 15, but it talks about remain in me and I will remain in you. And when you remain in me, you automatically produce fruits, automatically. But you don't know, remember, watch this, when that time is going to come. You don't know when the fruit is produced. You just know that you have a promise that says, when you remain in me, I remain in you. And because I remain in you and you remain in me, you automatically produce fruit. But there is no timetable on when this tree is going to take harvest. The only thing that you got to do is wait, AKA remain ready in me for your purpose. Am I teaching right now? Please let me know in the chat if I'm teaching. Just let me know. We just getting started. We ain't even got to the scriptures yet. I ain't even gave y'all the title yet. That's how you know we just get started. Right? So when you remain or you wait in him and he remains in you, you automatically produce. Wait actively with anticipation, hopefully watching for God to act. When is the last time that you just woke up with anticipation every single day? Like, God, this must be the day. Yesterday wasn't the day, so that means today has to be the day. And then you go to sleep and it didn't happen. And then you wake up and you say the same thing again. Like you're you're waiting eagerly, anticipating something to happen. You don't know what, you don't know how, but you're doing it eagerly. Anticipating it. Psalms 37:7 says this, be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. And don't fret when other people succeed in their ways. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. And don't trip when you see other people who may not be godly succeeding in their ways, because I know that I'm a victim. I know I said this before. God, I know they're not reading their Bible. Like how they, like I know, I know they ain't turn on YouTube and listen to none of your kingdom ambassadors. I know they not living right. But why come they still getting blessed? I know I'm not the only one. Because that's what we do. We think that us reading our Bible is a little bit more, us praying more, us talking to God more. We think that makes us more worthy of the gifts and the promises of God. But no matter what you do, man, it don't matter how much you pray. It don't matter how much you open your word. That does not put you in positioning to receive anything different from God. Everything he's going to do in your life, he's going to do it because he loves you, not because you are doing something for him. Right? So be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Don't trip, don't fret when other people succeed in their ways and they carry out everything they're doing that's wicked. Don't trip. Don't let it bother you. Be still. Wait patiently. Don't trip. See, the bigger the responsibility, the more waiting is required. The bigger the responsibility, ladies and gentlemen, the more waiting that's required. And I think that's why it's so important or so imperative that God had me change the full context of the direction that we'll be going for the next few weeks. I had a whole series mapped out before we even started the first series for where we should be at right now. But the thing with God, you have to be willing to use a pencil when you're dealing with God so that you can erase things and not use a pen. You feel what I'm saying sometimes? Because he'll come change up your whole plan. So he spoke to me this weekend and he was talking to me about something I'm actually dealing with in my particular life. And he said, yeah, I know you got this series planned out, but you should change it to this because people need to learn how to wait on me. He said, yeah, we say, wait on me, wait on the Lord, just wait on God. But what does that actually mean, though? And so he said, I want you to start a series called Weight Training. Oh, my God. I want you to start a series called Weight Training. And you got to be careful about how you write weight training down, because you may have the idea to write it down, W-E-I-G-H-T, dealing with weight. But what if God is dealing with you in a season of your life where he requires you to W-A-I-T and just wait? So let him teach you how to wait. Or you may be in a season of your life where it's a lot of weight on you. It's a lot of pressure on you. And he needs to teach you how to carry the weights. So we're going to be dealing with all of that for the next couple of weeks. Don't you love how God just comes up on the scene and just changes your plans? Because I was like, wait a minute, weight training. I like that. Yeah. Weight training. So this is about to be really good. This is about to be really good. Weight training. Because we all need it. We all need to have training, understanding, and revelation on how to wait on God, wait on the Lord, wait on him in our businesses, wait on him in our relationships. Every area of life, we have to get to a point where we can wait. Watch this. We can wait even when we're in the midst of carrying weight, because sometimes you wait on God, but you're not really carrying weight. You're just waiting. You're just waiting on something, but life isn't really hitting you. You just wait. You're just being patient. But then there's times where you're carrying weight, and you've been carrying weight for an extended period of time, and sometimes you feel like you can't stand anymore. And this just dropped in my spirit. When you feel like you can't stand anymore carrying the promises of God, he just said, kneel. Kneel. When the weight is too heavy for you to carry, kneel in his presence and cast your cares on him, because he cares for you. So that's why we got to deal with weight training for the next couple of weeks. And so we'll strategically be looking into people's lives of the faith to see and get revelation, revealed truth about how God uses the weight, how God navigates us in the period of waiting, in the period of holding something that's heavy, dealing with the challenge of life, but also in the period of just waiting on him to fulfill his word, fulfill his vision, fulfill his promises. And I don't know how much we're going to get through the night just off the strength of time, but I do want to get through a lot that I have to get through, just so that we can all get filled. So with that being said, let's analyze the first character, the first life that we'll be analyzing when it comes down to waiting on God, handling the weight and the pressure that comes with being a believer in God. The very first person that we're going to look at should not be a surprise. Follow me to Genesis. Follow me to Genesis and meet me over in chapter, I believe we're going to start in chapter 12. Genesis chapter 12. Yep. All right, cool. So Genesis chapter 12. The Lord has said to Abram, leave your native country, your relatives, your father's family, and go to the land that I will show you. I will. Listen to all of these wills. These are promises from God. This is, if God says he will do it, then he has to do it because he's God. So if God has ever spoke to you and said, I will do this for you, or you will do this for my kingdom, it is something that you can put your weight on as a guarantee that this is a promise from God. So listen to all these I wills that he says to Abram when he first calls him. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who treat you with contempt. All the families on earth will be blessed through you. So Abram departed as the Lord had instructed, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. He was 75 years old when he was called by God. He took his wife, Sarai, his nephew, and all of his wealth, his livestock, and all the people he had taken into his household at Haran, and headed for the land of Canaan. When they arrived in Canaan, Abram traveled through the land as far as Shechem. There he set up camp beside the oak of Moreh. At that time, the area was inhabited by Canaanites. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said this, I will, even though this land is inhabited by somebody else, I will give this land to your descendants. I will give this land to your descendants. And Abram built an altar there and dedicated it to the Lord who had appeared to him. So this is the father of our faith. This is Abram at the time, but later will be known as Abraham. At 75 years old, he received a promise from God. He received a promise from God. And the promise sounded amazing. Like, I'm sure that y'all was reading that and thinking like, that's for me. Yeah, make me into a great nation. Bless me, make me famous. Bless those who bless me. Matter of fact, those who could treat me with contempt, curse them. Like, receive it. You understand what I'm saying? But when God spoke all of this to Abraham, did y'all notice what was missing? It was two things missing. The first thing that was missing was a timetable. That's the first thing that was missing. It was a timetable. The second thing that was missing, we was going to deal with this later, but I'm going to just put it out now, and we're going to come back to this later. The second thing that was missing was a how. And I don't want to spill too much. I want to let that simmer. So the first thing that was missing was a timetable. The second thing that was missing was a how. Because if you read Genesis chapter 11, you will read that Abram's wife, Sarai, she was infertile, meaning she could not have kids. And so when you're saying that you're going to give this land to my descendants, what descendants are you talking about? I'm 75 years old. I'm 75 years old. And I love that God put this story in the Bible because I think that obviously, I don't think it's too many 75, 80, 90-year-old families having kids today, but I believe the story is put there to show us something. It's put there to show us that you have wintertime, springtime, summertime, fall time, but then you got God's time. To the physical eye, to the physical uterus, you can't have a baby at this age, but God saw a way that he was going to make where in the future, he doesn't say when, but in the future, he was going to have descendants. He was going to have descendants. So this is when Abraham was 75 years old. 75. The promise that we come to know as Isaac being born, that promise didn't happen until 25 years later. So he gets a promise and a call at 75. But the fulfillment of the promise doesn't happen until he's 100. It doesn't happen until 25 years later. So what was God? Please pay attention. What was God trying to show him? What was God trying to reveal to him within the wait? Because remember, God has a treasure for us, but the treasure is not limited to our timetable. It's not limited to our timetable. God has a divine appointed time in which he's going to do everything. So when Abraham got this promise, I'm sure he was excited. I'm sure he was lit. He's 75 years old. God just says he's going to make him to a great nation. He's going to be famous. He's going to bless him. Everybody on the earth going to be blessed through him. The people that bless him going to be blessed. The people that curse him and treat him with contempt will be cursed. This is the call he's getting at 75. So think about how excited you were when you got your first vision from God. When that person came and spoke to you and you knew that person was somebody who was connected to the Father, and they spoke life into you, and then God confirmed that. How excited were you when you got a word from God? You were so freaking excited. You start writing it down. You start believing. If you got a record, you start listening to it. That's what I did. I got things spoken over my life. I would make sure it was recorded, written down, and I would just play these things over and over. I still have saved recordings on my phone that I still listen to this day when people spoke something over my life. And when I get to a place where I don't believe or I'm doubting the promises that God has for me, I always go listen to the voices that God put in my life that said, you are this, you will do this. God has blessed you and called you to do this. I would just play this and just build myself up over and over, because faith comes by what? It comes by hearing. So when it don't look right, I had something that I could hear. So God gave him a promise, but he did not say how long it would take. And a lot of things that I listen to on my phone, these visions that I have, that I get, the words that I've gotten from God, a lot of this stuff don't come with a time on it. So when it says wait for the Lord, wait on the Lord, wait on God, you don't know how long you have to wait. But there is something that God is trying to reveal to you while you are waiting. And that's what we're going to examine in the life of Abraham tonight. The first thing I want you to notice, and if you look in Genesis chapter 12, verse 10, right? Chapter 12, verse 10. I'm not going to read all of this stuff. Read it when you got time to get like greater meaning, learn the story more and all that. But I just want to kind of go through some different points to reveal to you what God was revealing to Abraham in the midst of him waiting for the promise. And think, as I'm going through these, think about how God has revealed himself to you in different ways as you're waiting for the promise. Think about how he's blessed you and done things for you while you're waiting. You understand what I'm saying? So listen to this. At that time, this is Genesis 12 and 10. At that time, so this is after he's received the call from God. At that time, a severe famine struck the land of Canaan, forcing Abraham to go down to Egypt, where he lived as a foreigner. As he was approaching the border of Egypt, Abram said to his wife, Sarai, look, you are a very beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Let's kill him and we can have her. So please tell them that you are my sister. Then they will spare my life and treat me well because of their interest in you. So a famine came to the land, and they were forced to move. I can't just breathe past that. Put this in your notes. Famines are God's way of moving or repositioning us for our next. Famines, droughts, lack, periods of lack. This is God trying to reveal to us something. He's trying to move us somewhere, reposition us in him, right? So that we can get prepared for our next. Yeah, how do you know that? Well, you see this in the life of Abraham. A famine came and he was moved. You see this in the life of his son Isaac. A famine came and he was moved. And then even in the life of Joseph's brothers, a famine struck the land. And then Joseph's brothers had to come see him in Egypt. So famines are God's way of moving us and repositioning us. So if there's a famine in any area in your life right now, relationship famine, financial famine, business famine, whatever it may be, God is trying to reposition you. He's trying to move you and establish you for your next. But here's the thing about the famine. God gives favor in the famine. This is how God is revealing himself to Abraham while he's waiting, because God knew that when he gave Abraham the call, Bree, he knew that he wasn't about to do it immediately, because some things don't require immediate action. Some things require immediate patience. Yeah, see, God's promise to Abraham didn't require immediate action from Abraham. What it required was immediate patience, because it didn't have a timetable attached to it. So it wasn't, Abraham, I'm going to bless you and make you into a great nation next year, in 2 years, in 3 years. He just said he's going to do it, because the promises of God don't come with an expiration date. And the reason why they don't come with an expiration date is because he knows that we need time to mature and to grow into his promises, because he only does business with the mature, Miss Jasmine. He only does business with the mature. And so when the famine struck, they were forced to move and forced to reposition. Abraham says, look, you my wife, you bad. Even, listen, she was old too. You got to think, at this time, Abraham is like 75 years old. That means Sarah's like 99 years. Sarah's like 74 years old. So she's a bad old woman. So bad that he believed that they would have killed him for her. But listen to this. In verse 17, but the Lord sent terrible plagues upon Pharaoh and his household because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And then if you keep scrolling down, it says Pharaoh ordered some of his men to escort them, and he sent Abram out of the country along with all of the possessions. Because when Abram was there, Pharaoh gave him many gifts because of Sarai, his wife: sheep, goats, cattle, male and female donkeys, and servants, and camels. So even though they walked into famine, they still had favor, and they left with more than they walked in with. And so I just feel in my spirit that you're going to leave with more than you walked in with, because God gives favor in the famine. He's revealing himself to Abraham, and Abraham may not know this as he's going through it, but God's revealing himself to him in a different way. Because look at this. Abraham gives his wife to Pharaoh. God sends a plague to Pharaoh. So even in the midst of Abram's stupid act, selfish acts, he still found favor in his selfishness. Let's keep growing. Let's keep growing. Genesis chapter 13, next chapter. Now at this point, Abram has now became more wealthy. And the people that were connected to him became wealthy as well. I speak that over all of our lives, that the people that are just connected to us and close to us, they become wealthy as well. They become prosperous as well. Abram was very rich in livestock, silver and gold. From the Negev, they continued to traveling by stages toward Bethel, and they pitched their tents between Bethel and Ai, where they camped before. Scroll down some. Lot was traveling with Abram, who had also become wealthy, with flocks of sheep and goats, herds, and cattle, and many tents, but the land could not support both Abram and Lot with all their flocks and herds living so close together. So disputes broke out between the herdsmen of Abram and Lot. At the time, Canaanites and Perizzites were also living in the land. So here we are with a situation. We're in another situation where Abraham acted in the place of disobedience, but God still gave him favor as he's waiting for the promise. And now you may be saying, Riyadh, where did Abraham act disobediently? Well, if you go back to chapter 12, it'll say that God told him to leave the land, but don't take nobody with you but your wife and people that come down from you. Don't take none of your family members with you. Leave all of your family members there with you. But he brings his nephew with him, Lot. And so now, because God blessed Abraham, he blessed Lot as well. And they both had resources out of the wazoo. And now it was too much strife on the land. And so Abram says, all right, listen, this is what we're going to do. Look to the east or look to the west. Whatever land you see, that's the land that you can go and inhabit. And I'm gonna go the opposite way. Lot took a long look. This is chapter, verse 10. Lot took a long look at the fertile plains of the Jordan in the direction of the Zor. The whole area was watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord or the beautiful land of Egypt. Lot chose for himself the whole Jordan Valley to the east of them. He went there with his servants and his flocks and parted company with his uncle Abram. So Abram settled in the land of Canaan, the land that flows with milk and honey. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, but Lot went the opposite way. So that, my friends, is more favor from the Father. Because even though you disobeyed, even though you brought somebody with you, you brought something from an old season into a new season that was not supposed to come with you, I'm still going to provide favor for you as you wait on this promise, because I need you to have a better understanding about me. Because when you come to know me, that's why we had to start with to know him. Because when you come to know him, when you come to know me and understand me, you can now trust me. So I'm revealing myself to you in different ways that may not even look like me. It was me that told Lot to go to the opposite side so that you can inhabit the land that I already called you to. But watch this. As soon as Lot got away from Abram, as soon as they were separated, the Lord said to Abram, look as far as you can see in every direction, north, south, east, and west. I'm giving you all this land as far as you can see, to you and to your descendants as a permanent possession. And I will give you so many descendants that, like the dust of the earth, they cannot be counted. Go and walk through the land in every direction, even the land that you gave Lot. Walk over there too, because I'm giving you everything that your eyes can see. He couldn't tell him that until Lot left his presence, until the thing that came into the new season. Please get this. The old thing, the old habit, the old person, the old thing, whatever that is that you are planning to bring or you've brought into a new season, it's not until you part ways with that where God can speak to you more clearly about where he's called you to. Because it wasn't until Lot separated from him that he could go into details about what he's doing. Walk through all of this land, even the land that you just gave away, that's yours too. That's yours too. So favor. So God gave favor in the famine. He gave favor when it came to decision making, a decision that had to be made by somebody else. Man, imagine having that type of favor from God when somebody else has to make a decision that concerns you, but they make a decision that benefits you, that blesses you while you wait on the promises of God. Because one thing that he wants to reveal to us while we wait is the favor of God. And sometimes we don't see that favor. It's not a just jump off the screen type of favor. It's the favor that Lot decides to go this way and you decide to go this way. But it wasn't Lot that decided to go this way. It was me moving on Lot to make him go this way, because Lot appealed to the flesh. Lot focused on what he could see. Lot said that the land looks good. But sometimes what looks good, my friends, is not good. So Abram settled in the land of Canaan, and Lot moved his tents to a place near Sodom and settle amongst the cities of the plain, Sodom and Gomorrah. But the people of this area were extremely wicked and constantly sinned against the Lord. So God strategically made this happen where Abram didn't have to be around something that could have pulled him away from the promises of God. Favor. Favor. God also gave Abram favor in warfare. He gave him favor when it came to a physical battle as he awaited the promises of God. And sometimes that's what we need God's favor in, a physical battle as we wait for the promises of God. But the funny thing about Abram's battle is a battle that he didn't even have to fight. It's a battle that he actually put himself in, but he put himself into it, but it was God's grace that got everybody out of it safely. What do you mean that he put himself into it? Well, Lot, his boy who should have never been with him in the beginning, found a way to come with him and got put in a position where he was taken by kings. This is in chapter 14. He was taken by kings, but one of Lot's men escaped. This is verse 13, chapter 14, verse 13. But one of Lot's men escaped and reported everything to Abram, the Hebrew, who was living near the oak grove belonging to Mamre and Amorite. Mamre and his relatives, Echo and Aner, were Abram's allies. Listen to this. When Abram heard that his nephew Lot had been captured, he mobilized the 318 trained men who had been born into his household. Then he pursued Kedorlaomer. I don't even know his name. We're going to call him Mr. K. Then he pursued Mr. K's army until he caught up with them at Dan. There, listen to this. He divided his men and attacked during the night. Mr. K's army fled, but Abram chased them as far as Hobah and north of Damascus. Abram recovered all the goods that had been taken, and he brought back his nephew Lot with his possessions and all the women and the other captives. So even when it came down to battle, understand this, Abram was not a man of war. Abraham wasn't a man of battle, JVL. But when it came down to somebody that he loved, man, God moved on him the ability to mobilize 318 trained people from his household. But remember, he's fighting an army, but he only got 318. But the army didn't matter when it came down to God being on his side, because the battle was not even fought. The enemies fled. So God gave faith. Please pay attention, because I'm talking about the favor that God shows us while we wait on his promises. Because sometimes the promise doesn't come in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. But watch this. If you look at year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, what you will find is the favor of God. Am I lying to you? Let me know in the chat if I'm lying to you. If your promise hasn't come to pass yet, can you look back in the previous years and still find the favor of God in the midst of you waiting on God? He's showing it to us through Abraham's life. Like, look at the favor. After you read this, you won't find nowhere else in the Bible, to my knowledge, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. I'm so open to teaching. But I have not saw anywhere else in the Bible after this where Abram did any type of battle, any type of war. He's not a man of war. But the favor of God puts you in position, and you don't even got to fight the battle. That's the favor that I'm talking about. Man. But flip over another page and go to Genesis 15. Man. Yeah, we're not going to get through everything I want to get through tonight. Maybe we, all right, let's see what we can get done. So let's take a step and think about what happened. And then think about your life. Chapter 12, he gets a word. In the same chapter that he gets the word, famine breaks out. Has anybody ever been there? Like, I got this goal, I got this word, I got this vision. I get it. Next thing I know, all hell breaks loose. But even in the midst of all hell breaking loose, even in the midst of a famine, God still showed favor. Even when it came to warfare and decision-making, things dealing with somebody that you brought into something that wasn't supposed to be there, Lot, he still had favor in warfare, favor in decision. He also had favor in relationship in terms of dealing with Melchizedek. Melchizedek was the high priest that God used him to bless Abraham. Abraham gave him 1/10 of his offering. Not gonna get too deep into that. We got to keep going. But so think about all this favor in relationship, favor in warfare, favor in decision, favor in the midst of famine. He walked into the famine with less, came out with more. This is God revealing himself. But go to chapter 15. Go to chapter 15 and let's keep looking at how God constantly reveals himself. So after all of that, sometime later, don't say how long, it just says sometime later, because God's timing is always perfect. So when he speaks at the right time, it's for a reason. Sometime later, the Lord spoke to Abram in a vision and said to him, do not be afraid, Abram, for I will protect you. That's a promise. And your reward will be great. That's a promise. But Abram replied, O sovereign Lord, listen to this. What good are all these blessings when I don't even have a son? Since you've given me no children, Elijah of Damascus, a servant in my household, will inherit all my wealth. You have given me no descendants of my own. And so one of my servants will be my heir. Then the Lord said to him, no, your servant will not be your heir, for you will have a son of your own who will be your heir. Then the Lord took Abram outside and said to him, look up into the sky. That's the visual, because the beauty about having a picture that is a picture that gives your heart more belief to move, the picture that you see in your imagination. Then the Lord took Abram outside and said to him, look up into the sky and count the stars if you can. I love that part because that just shows the comedy of God. Like, look up at the stars and count them if you can. That's how many descendants you will have. So can you imagine the disbelief on Abram's face at this time? I don't got no kids. I don't got one. I don't have a son. The wife who you called me to, Sarah, she's been infertile since the day I met her. She's 80 plus. You telling me to look up at the stars and count them? Because sometimes when God gives us vision, it completely contradicts our current reality. Yeah, oftentimes he gives us vision in the valley that contradicts our reality. It don't look like nothing like what he said, but you just have to believe that he said it. Because Abram did. You don't got to know how it's going to work out. You just got to believe that he will. And Abram believed the Lord. And listen to this. The Lord counted him as righteous because of his faith. Then the Lord said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of the Ur of the Chaldeans, that's his hometown, to give you this land as your possession. For Abram replied, O sovereign Lord, how can I be sure that this promise will come to pass? How can I be sure that I will actually possess it? Then the Lord told him, bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. So Abram presented all of these to him and killed them as a sacrifice. Then he cut each as a sacrifice. Lord, how can I be sure that this is for me? Sacrifice something. and let him reveal something to you. So Abram presented all these to him and killed them. Then he cut each animal down the middle and laid the half side by side. He did not, however, cut the birds in half. Some vultures swooped down and to eat the carcasses, and Abram chased them away. As the sun was going down, listen to this, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a terrifying darkness came down over him. Then the Lord said to Abram, so before he says this, he just asked him, Lord, how will I be sure that I will possess it? Abram makes a sacrifice. After he makes a sacrifice, God speaks to him. He said, you can be sure, because that's what you asked me. You can be sure that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land. Well, they will be oppressed as slaves for 400 years, but I will punish the nation that enslaves them, and in the end, they will come away with great wealth. As for you, you will die and die in peace and be buried at a ripe old age. After 4 generations, your descendants will return here to this land that you own right now. For the sins of the Amorites do not yet warrant their destruction. Okay. Man, can I just go to work real quick on this? I got a whole nother chapter to get to, but I think I'm gonna just save it. It just depends on, how y'all feeling. Listen to this. You can be sure that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land where they will be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. Pause for a minute. What in the world? What type of person? What type of God can lay a plan for 400 years in advance and tell it to you? Like, you can be sure, because in 400 years, this is what's going to happen. Because we can think from day to day. God is thinking generation to generation. So when he's doing something in your life, a lot of the big things that he does in our life is not for us. It's for the people that are coming behind us. So God revealed himself to Abraham in a completely new way. He said, listen, this is how you can be sure, because in 400 years, this is what's going to happen. So he's showing him that I'm God, the all-knowing God, the all-seeing God. So if I tell you something, don't doubt it. If I tell you something, don't doubt it. He's revealing his plan to him. That's what you call favor. Do you know how many people go throughout life and never have God, or never hear when God is revealing to them the plan of their life, what the next has in store for them? But God revealed himself to Abram in a way that said, listen, over the next 400 years, or in 400 years, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. After 4 generations, your descendants, you don't got no descendants now, but after 400 years, I'm telling you, after 400 years, that means you're going to have some descendants. That means you're going to have a son, because I'm telling you, after 400 years, your descendants will return to this very land that we're standing on right now. For the sins, listen to this part, please pay attention. For the sins of the Amorites do not yet warrant their destruction. Now, you probably thinking to yourself, why is that important? And if you're not, you should be. Why did it take 400 years? Why not 100 years? Why not 200 years? Why not 300 years? Why did it have to be 400 years, Cam? The reason why it had to be 400 years is because it says it right here. The sins of the Amorites do not yet warrant their destruction. So what does that mean for us? God is so God that he is preparing multiple scenes at one time. He's preparing the scene of you, your hearts, but he's also preparing the scene of your promise. And if the scene of your heart, the scene of your character, the scene of who you are as a person is not at the alignment of the timing of the scene that he's preparing for your promise, then you, my friend, cannot step into it yet. It didn't matter that some of the people were ready to walk into the promised land. They couldn't walk into the promised land until God finished preparing the scene of the promised land. The people that were in the land, they had not yet done enough to be removed out of the land. So sometimes God, he can't do the things that he wants to do because the scene has not been fully prepared yet. Do you know that no matter how great Kevin Hart is, no matter how many jokes he has ready to perform, he cannot walk on the stage to perform until the scene is ready, until there's people in the seats, until the warm-up comedians have done their thing, until the lights are set right, until the streaming is set right. He cannot perform at the fulfillment of his gift and his calling and have the impact in which he should have if the scene is not ready yet. So sometimes you may be ready, but the scene that God is preparing for you is not ready just yet. Wow. Wow. Because Abram should be thinking to himself, like, if I'm standing on the land right now, why can't my descendants start filling the land right now? Why do we got to wait 400 years? I'm not even going to be here in 400 years. But remember what I said earlier. The bigger the blessing, the bigger the responsibility, the bigger the promise, the more waiting that's required. The more waiting that's required. Think about how big and how grand the promise, the call that God gave Abram. The very first thing that we read, I will make you famous. I will bless you. Everybody on the earth will be blessed through you. Matter of fact, you're going to be so blessed when people come in contact with you, they're going to be blessed. The people that treat you with contempt, they're going to be cursed. I'm going to make you famous. Your descendants will cover the earth. The people on March 7th who sit on a Zoom call and listen to a kid named Riyad Jones, who's 28 years old, they are going to be blessed because of you. So that Abram takes time. But in the midst of you waiting, let me reveal favor. Let me reveal my favor to you while you wait. And so just think about your life. Think about how God has showed you so much favor, even though you have not seen the fulfillment of the promises of God. And you're in this gap between it being spoken to you or dropped in your spirit and it actually being made manifest in your life. That mystery in the middle, we thank you for the favor in the mystery of the middle. We thank you that you have us in wait training to be able to wait and to know how to wait and be able to have evidence of other people who waited on the promises of God, because those that wait on you will renew their strength. Their strength is made new all over again. They will mount up on wings like eagles. They will run and not faint. They will walk and not grow weary. They won't get tired when they wait on the Lord. When they wait on the Lord. Man. Yo, can I go a little bit longer tonight? Can I go a little bit longer? Like, I just need y'all. Just okay. Because I'm sorry if y'all gotta go to sleep, but I just gotta keep this going because it's one more chapter we gotta discuss, and I promise we're gonna call it a night. Because waiting, Sydney just texted me and said no. I'm sorry, babe. Just give me a couple more minutes. Waiting isn't easy though. Waiting isn't easy. Yeah, we understand there's going to be favor when we wait, and we got favor in the warfare, and he's showing us these, like, whatever, he's revealing himself to us in new ways when we wait, the favor of God, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, waiting is not easy. Waiting is very challenging. Waiting God's way requires God. Please put that in your notes. Waiting God's way requires God. What do you mean by that, Riyadh? Well, if you remember the last call that we did, which was titled The Result of Relationship. One of the results of relationship, being in relationship with the Father, is having fruits, the fruits of the Spirit. And one of the fruits of the Spirit is patience or long suffering. So in order to wait God's way, it requires God's Spirit. Because when we wait without God's Spirit, we can move and act impulsively. We can move and act impulsively when we're waiting without God's Spirit.
Just go on, calling. I'm like, why?
Right? We can move and do things in an impulsive manner when we're not sensitive to the Spirit that's on the inside of us and the gifts and the fruit that we have. So Abram is waiting without Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit had not yet come, but he's still waiting. So it's easier, because here's the thing. Like, a lot of times we be wanting God to come talk to us how he talked to Moses. Like, come talk to us in a burning bush. You feel me? Like, make yourself clear to me. Find the burning bush and light it up, and then give me a word. You understand? Like, how I know I ain't the only one. Like, make yourself plain. Make yourself clear. Like, just turn my music down when I'm in my car and just drop something on me. Like, don't let me turn it down. You turn it down. We be wanting God to all this funny, crazy, like all this stuff, right? But the reason, like, why God don't got to do that stuff no more, see, he had to talk to Moses through a burning bush because Moses didn't have Holy Spirit. Like, all the people of the faith of the Old Testament, none of them possessed the Holy Spirit. So he had to talk to them through like crazy, wild ways. But now that we got the Holy Spirit, he just dropped something on you. And you don't got to look for a wild way to hear from God. He just dropped something on you. But you got to be in him enough to know that it was him. You got to be in him enough to know that it was him. You got to be sensitive to the Spirit to know that that was God. So because we have the Spirit living inside of us as a fruit of Holy Spirit, it puts us in a position where we don't have to act as impatiently, as impulsively. We can wait patiently and expectantly. But I'm about to get y'all up out of here real quick. Chapter 16, we just flipping the page. I was just looking through Abraham's life. Now Sarah, Abraham's wife, had not been able to bear children for him, but she had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. So Sarah said to Abram, the Lord has prevented me from having children. Go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can have a child through her. And Abram agreed with Sarah's proposal. So Sarah, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, the Egyptian servant, and gave her to Abram as a wife. This happened 10 years after Abram had settled in the land of Canaan. So Abram had sexual relations with Hagar, and she became pregnant. And when she found out she was pregnant, she began to treat Sarai with contempt. Here's the point I want you to put down for that. Waiting patiently does not mean waiting perfectly. Waiting patiently does not mean waiting perfectly. Because sometimes when you're waiting on God, like we can beat ourselves up when we mess up or do something while we're waiting. But waiting doesn't mean that you're going to wait perfectly. Like God knew, remember, he mapped out a plan and he told Abram, like, yo, I know this, I got this thing mapped out 400 years from now. So because he has things mapped out 400 years and he knew that Jesus would be slain before he made the world. So before he made the world, Jesus was already slain. So he works in advance. And he knows that we're not perfect, but we're progressing. But what happened with Abram, he allowed his impatience to make him act impulsively. But his impulsive acts still did not take him out of the promise of God. But the thing about impatience, it'll give birth to something that will make you fight your promise. Put it in your notes. Impatience will make you give birth to something that will make you fight your promise. See, anytime you come up with a solution that's not in submission to God's strategy, you're only sabotaging yourself. Anytime you come up with a solution that's not in submission to God's strategy for your life, you only sabotage yourself. You only sabotage yourself. That's all you do. Like all Abram did by doing that was sabotage himself and cause strife in his household between Sarai and Hagar, the servant. They battered and bickered every single day because that was not the will of God. But earlier I said something on the call. God left out some things when he gave him the promise. And God revealed this to me this afternoon when I was reading this. He said, don't be so hard on Abraham. Because we could be looking at that like, dang, Abraham, like God told you all this stuff. Why didn't you just listen? Like he said you was going to have a kid. He said you was going to do this. He said you was going to have descendants. He said he was going to bless you, make you famous. But why didn't you just, like, why did you sleep with your wife's servant? Like, why did you do that? Abraham knew the plan of God, but he was unclear of the inner workings of the plan of God. See, Abraham conjured up in his mind that, okay, God gave me this promise 10 years ago. It has not showed up yet. And when he gave it to me, I was curious as to how it was going to happen anyway, because my wife is infertile. She can't have kids. And he never, please pay attention to this. He never once said, if you look through the text, I was searching for this. If you look through from chapter 12 to chapter 16, he never once said that it was going to be his wife that produced the promise. Never said it. So Abram was going through this whole time in the dark as to how this was going to happen. He never said it was going to be your wife that produces the child. He just said that you was going to have them. But he never gave him the how, though. That's so good to me. That's so good to me. Because sometimes when God give us stuff, he never give us the inner workings. Because when something looked dead, he still can use the dead thing to bring about the promise that he spoke over your life. He took the dead womb of Sarai, changed her name to Sarah, and then time later, she had a kid. We're going to get to all that. Not tonight, though, but we're going to get to that. But he took a dead thing. So the thing that may look dead in our life, God can still use it. He can still use it. So it's so funny that he never gave him a word that said, I'm going to do all this through your wife, Sarah. It was about Abram and Sarai just trusting that he will. And the evidence, remember, there's favor. If you look back, there's evidence that Sarai was going to be used for some type of purpose, because in chapter 12, when they went into Egypt, man, and he said, yo, I'm going to just tell them you my sister, because if I tell them you my wife, they're going to kill me to get to you. And if I tell them that you my sister, they'll take you, they'll probably sleep with you and do all this, but at least I'll still keep my life. God wanted to make that womb and Sarai so perfect for, he didn't want nobody to deal with that, nobody to touch that. And that's why he gave them favor in the midst of famine, because he knew that Sarai was going to be used. She was holy. She was set apart for a divine purpose, even though they didn't know the purpose at the time. That's why he gave them favor in that season, because he knew that he was going to use Sarai the whole time, but they didn't know that. So when Abram slept with Sarai in chapter 16, it wasn't out of disobedience. God showed me that today. It wasn't out of disobedience that he did that, because God never told him not to do that. He just conjured up in his own mind that it's not going to work out the way that I think God was going to do it, so let me do it in my own strength. And how many of us have been down that block before? Yeah, I know God said he was going to do it, but yeah, I don't see him. I don't know where he's at right now. So yeah, I'm going to just do this in my own strength. I'm going to just do this. Can you stop this group chat? I'm going to just do this my way. I'm going to just do this in my own strength. Let me try to mute this. Yeah. Been there. Like, you ain't going to work it out. I'm going to figure out my way to work it out. You ain't going to wait on God. I've been waiting since been waiting. I can't wait no more. And that's what Abram's saying, because he had at this point been waiting for 10 years for the promise of God. He had been waiting 10 years from the promise of God. And he allowed his impatience, and he also allow him not being completely clear on the inner workings of the plans of God to make him act in an impulsive manner and potentially abort the promise of God. Because here's the thing, we never know what our decisions lead to. And Abram didn't know if he acted impulsively that this could lead to the promise being aborted. He didn't know that at the time. He couldn't see the followings of those acts. He couldn't see what followed that. So him acting impulsively put himself in a position where he could have potentially aborted the promises of God. But here's the beautiful thing about the promises of God. No man can abort the promises of God. And that's so beautiful for you to know that. Because even when we act impulsively, even when we act impatiently, God still extends to us grace. He still extends to us grace, right? And I want to keep going, but we're about to hop off the call tonight. So here's the 3 points I want you to put in your phone, in your notes. When it comes to waiting on God, it's 3 quick points. I'm not even gonna dive deep into them. They pretty much talk for themselves, and you got enough meat. But I do want to give you 3 practical points about waiting. So the first thing you gotta know is I gotta wait patiently. I have to wait patiently on the promises of God. Number 2, I have to wait expectantly. Expecting the promises of God. Then number 3, I have to worship while I wait. So while you wait, you worship the Father. You worship the Father through your bodily actions, what you do with your body, how you serve is a form of worship. How you give is a form of worship. How you talk to people and impact people is a form of worship. You worshiping through music and like all that's worship. So you worship him while you wait. If you notice, like after Abram received promises in chapter 12, what he did was worship at the end of chapter 12. That's what he did. He worships. So while you're waiting, you wait patiently, you wait expectantly. Then number 3, you worship while you wait. So are y'all blessed with the first call of weight training? Because that was heavy. Like, and I'm still not even like, I still got stuff to talk about, but we just gonna do this on the next call. But man, I feel like everybody's in that season where we're like waiting on God to do something in our life. It may not be a grand, big, huge thing, but you're still waiting on God to do something. And because he knows that time, his time is the most important time, and his time transcends our time, is greater than our time. He wants to put us in something called weight training, where we learn how to wait. We know how to wait on God. We have example of other people of the faith who waited and saw the fulfillment of that promise. They didn't know when it was going to happen, but they knew that it would. So, Father, I thank you for weight training. I think that you're taking us all through a period of learning how to wait on you, wait on the promises of you. Because the period of waiting is not just so that you can do things for us, but more importantly, so that you can do things through us. You can do things within us. Many people want miracles on the outside, but when we're in the kingdom, the miracle first has to happen on the inside. So we thank you for the miracle that you're doing on the inside of us as we continue to wait on you. Father God, give us a revelation more about who you are. Show us your favor in new ways, and just reveal yourself to us in a new way as the days continue to go by, because you are infinite. Your love is deep, is wide, is unmeasurable. So to think that we can know you after 6 weeks or 7 weeks or after 5 years, we're doing ourselves a disservice. It's a constant journey to knowing you and the mysteries of you. And we thank you for the space that you've created for us all to come together and know you at a deeper level. So it's in your son Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pray that y'all felt that call tonight. That blessed me. I knew it would be impactful when God says, you're not going to talk about that, you're going to talk about this. So we're probably going to be in this series for another maybe 4 or 5 weeks. I'm not sure. I know we didn't even finish up what we had tonight. It's so much stuff when it comes to this particular topic, because again, everybody's in a position where we're waiting on God to do something. Waiting on God to do something. So I love y'all. I'm gonna see y'all on the call next Monday for this call, and then we have our prayer call on Sunday. So love y'all. Y'all have a good week. God bless.